Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Tonight, I'm going to venture into some uncharted territory for myself. I very rarely venture into the areas that are, we'll say, highly confrontational. I try to keep stuff focused on code and steer away from that because oftentimes people just like to argue and that's not worth it. However, there are times where it's worth going through and doing a discussion. And very recently, there has been a fiery debate going on with the Moq library, that's MOQ, and some recent changes that was made. And there is all kinds of flame wars happening on the internets. And so we'll discuss a bit what happened. I'll give a little bit of my perspective, but I think I want to use this a little bit as a learning opportunity to teach people about NuGet packages, understanding your supply chain, and how all of that works. I think this is a really good example of making sure that people actually understand this, because far too often I see people just blindly, oh, sure, I'll add that NuGet package to my repository. That's a really bad mindset to have. You really should be thinking about what's being brought in, licensing models, all of that. So I figured we would use this as an example, as it were, to go through and do that. So, okay, first and foremost, there's gonna be a couple links here. And so I do beg your pardon, indulge me for a minute. I promise we'll do code. And then we'll probably do some material design stuff later. Probably. We'll see how burned out this makes me. I don't like doing this. I really don't like confrontation. Anyway, moving on. Okay, so if we go here, so there is this blog post from Sean Killian, and I've seen a lot of people write various stuff on this, but I felt like he did a fairly good job of providing a balanced description of what happened, what should be going on. So, short version, Moq is a mocking library. Even in my open source projects and my .NET templates, it is my default mocking library that I enjoy using. Full disclosure, I also am a maintainer of one of the libraries inside of the MOQ org called AutoMoq. So it's a library built on top of Moq that facilitates creating up all of your mocks so that you don't have to do it by hand. Great, wonderful. I have a slightly biased opinion of Moq because of that, because I do tend to favor it. Like, it is my preferred one of choice. Some people just like to, throw soot on everything, and so I'm just going to ignore those people. But the author of Moq and the maintainer, Daniel, I'm going to not try for his last name. I'm going to go with his Git handle, KZU. He marks it as pronounced kazoo, like the little kazoo. As you can tell, I'm not a musician. That shouldn't shock anybody. In fact, I'm fairly tone deaf. But there was, at some point, the Moq library became untenable. I'd be curious what this is based on. My personal opinion, pretty much every open source project reaches this around commit number 1, give or take, right? Open source software, you don't do it for the money, ever. Like, it is basically passion projects, in my opinion. People have various opinions about, who should be paying and all that stuff. I won't bother to comment there. And there's this long ongoing discussion about, how do we make open source a sustainable thing? Because people in software build on, or I think the phrase is standing on the shoulders of giants. So there's always this idea of, we're going to bring in all of these packages and build this great stuff, but we forget that all of those packages we brought in have to be built and maintained by somebody, right? Somebody's potentially passion project is the bedrock of your application that you've built. And that's something important to keep in mind, especially as you're bringing in NuGet packages. Functionally, every package you depend on is the foundation of your software. And so you should look at every potential package that your software brings in as, how screwed would I be if this went away, right? That's measure it based on that. That is the appropriate metric. So Daniel blogged that he'd be building a tool called SponsorLink. We'll take a brief look at that in a moment. Trying something newish. This thing kind of goes into a lot of details about it. I'm not going to rehash it. We're going to look at how it works a bit. But short version, he was looking for a way to make his open source work a sustainable model. Great, fine. Like, open source maintainers should do that, right? Like, it is very much passion projects. We don't get paid hardly anything. Most years I actually end up, the donations that come in on the various projects end up getting donated elsewhere, often to other contributors, because frankly, like, it's not a, I am not going to quit my day job to be an open source maintainer anytime soon. Let's put it that way. Anyway, the issue came, and a lot of people freaked out about it, because there are, not necessarily at the idea of we need to make open source a sustainable model, but his particular implementation raised a lot of red flags for people, specifically around privacy and GDPR. And there's a lot of questions about, you know, this was warned ahead of time. Why did we still go through with it? That kind of thing. And then it got pushed out. And the way it was pushed out also raised some red flags for people. There was things that made it feel a little shady. Open source has, and I really like the way Sean labeled his blog thing on the open source sustainability social contract, right? I think oftentimes that gets overlooked in a lot of situations, that open source really is a social thing. Like, we like to think of it as software, but at the end of the day, it's really maintainers that are behind this, right? And there's this some degree unspoken type thing going back and forth, right? And then let they who are without OOS, open source software sin, cast the first stone. Yeah. So the subtle implication here is everyone's screwed up in open source. Right there, any maintainer who's even tried to like change their license type on their repo has probably experienced this. The only ones who don't experience this kind of pain are the ones with very low download numbers. Right? Anybody with any significant download numbers, you make a significant change, you're going to break somebody's workflow. You're going to make somebody unhappy. That's the way it goes. There's no way around it, and it's important to understand that, again, because maintainers, in my opinion, are free to do what they want with their libraries. Right? Like, this is very much a kind of a consumer-y model of, they're the maintainer / owner, right? They can do with it as they please. The fact that they're sharing it with everybody is something that should be received with gratitude, not entitlement, as what happens most on it. We'll skip through over all of this stuff, right? Because a lot of this comes down to this social contract of that idea that open source is expected to be kind of like the share and share alike, right? Is what a lot of times happens. And then there's a lot of, how could this have been prevented, back and forth. At the end of the day, I think my simple opinion is this was something that was, and you can argue poor communication, but like, there were blog posts. Like, the maintainer posted plenty of things. The fact that most of the time people's interaction with these packages is via the NuGet updater, and there's not a great way to surface a lot of information there. Like, if you aren't following the project, you aren't watching the maintainers, blogs, tweets, etc., or seem to not be tweets, then, like, how are you going to know about these kinds of updates, right? So you could argue poor communication, but I would say if we argue poor communication, we kind of have to do that from both sides, right? It was clearly talked about and publicly mentioned, so some of it has to fall on the consumer. And then people sustaining the project, right? Oftentimes people complain about projects that they've never opened issues or pull requests for. And to some degree, that's expected, right? The bar for good NuGet packages and library development is actually a lot higher than app development. And in my opinion, building a strong library takes a kind of a next level of code thinking versus just app level or application level development in a lot of cases. Because when you're building app level, you're specific to a domain. You can make certain assumptions. You don't have to worry about what happens if somebody consumes this from .NET Framework 4.8 and they have nullable reference types disabled? How do I declare this public method? Right? That's usually the domain of the library developer trying to think through all of those conditions, figure out, how can I support the broadest set of users, that kind of thing. Whereas an app developer is focused on how do I make my app work the way that it's supposed to. And so in a lot of cases, I think people don't contribute back to libraries because it is that higher bar. And some people either don't feel like they can do it, which if that's you, stick around. Hacktoberfest is coming. Everyone should do Hacktoberfest. Different story. But it is very common to see open source projects with no contributions and very little support. That's normal. And again, I'll go back to that thing. My opinion is open source projects reach the unsustainable point about commit number 1, right? I don't know that they, like a few of them managed to pull out of that unsustainable state that they start in, but it's very few and far between, right? If you, I live in America, it's like the idea of how many people, reach all the way to that, that higher millionaire upper class level thing. Not a ton. It's possible, it happens, sure, but percentage wise, the vast majority aren't going to. That's the way percentages work. And I don't think open source is any different, right? You have to reach a certain level of valuableness. That's not the right word. I don't want to say value either, because that doesn't line up. Business value. You have to reach a particular level of business value to bring it in. The other thing that I'm not a big fan of, and I just want to call it out here on this. Oh, I probably should have lined it up somewhere. There is a line in here. This line here, I'm a firm believer that supporting your fellow developers is something best done personally. Having your company pay for software surely doesn't feel quite as rewarding as paying for it out of your own pocket. It sure feels different for me too. I don't disagree that when you pay for something yourself, there's a certain level of ownership that goes along with it, versus if your company just provides it for you, whatever, right? Oftentimes, people talk about this when they're like providing things for their kids, like university, right? The student who is working, the night shift at a job to try to pay their way through school is a heck of a lot more invested in their schooling than the student where it was paid for them, right? And this seems to be the same argument that's being put forward here for open source projects. The problem I have with this is not the way that I've seen so many open source projects pull out of that unsustainable model into a sustainable one. It's with corporate backing. Your project reaches a point where the companies building on it, the ones that are smart and paying attention, that realizing you are a foundational stone and that their project would be screwed without you, realize that they need to start investing back in that project to make sure that it stays alive. Right? Because if your project goes under, they have to evaluate the cost of switching to something else. That's the value trade. Because if there's a lot of options out there and you're one of 1,000 and the cost of switching away from your library to a different one is nothing, no one's going to back you. Right? This is a passion project. The cost is how hard are you to replace? And if the answer is really bloody hard, okay, now you probably have a case to be made where people should be backing you. Now, I'm not going to say necessarily where Moq lands in there, but it is arguably one of the most popular mocking libraries out there, and I don't doubt that a lot of people's tests depend on it. Then we get into the argument of, do people value their tests or not? Different discussion. But I, from my personal standpoint, I don't believe that trying to pull yourself out of a unsustainable into a sustainable model with personal contributions is a viable option. I agree with the sentiment. I think that people who are personally invested in something absolutely will feel more invested if they pay for it themselves. I just don't think that's the way. If the end goal is to bring yourself into a sustainable model, that's the way to do it. If the goal is to get people personally invested in your project, sure. But if the goal is to get yourself into a sustainable model, I don't see it happen. So, my opinion. Again, I think it is worth going through. I really like how Sean did a really good job of citing all his sources, linking to stuff, pulling through. There is a comment here about it's not a supply chain issue. This has been a common discussion that I've seen pop up on a lot of threads where people liken this to a supply chain attack. So for people unfamiliar, supply chain attack, imagine your app is built on top of NuGet package foo, right? Some third party decides that they are going to hijack and be able to inject their own version of the foo library, and this new one is the one that your package downloads via some nefarious means, and therefore now your stuff breaks or behaves differently than what you expect. In a supply chain attack, the goal is usually to just get that thing in, get it in the deployed app, and get it out and running. There is a functionally similar thing that happens if the maintainer of your library decides to go through and change behavior, right? In a supply chain attack, it's usually not the author that's trying to hose you. It's usually somebody getting between you and the original intended author and doing something nefarious. But if the author decides that, you know what, we're going to kill this package, right? That happens a lot, right? Maintainers burn out and they decide, you know what, I'm done maintaining this, project's going kaput, right? That is functionally, at least from your app's perspective, one of your foundational blocks is dying, right? Maybe it's not going away immediately, but any project not maintained will eventually become obsolete. .NET versions are revving out a new one every November, right? The idea is things are going to keep iterating. If you don't have a project that's updating several years down the road, you're now out of support, you're now dead, right? That block is going away. Sure, you've got a little bit of warning, but there's a similar idea going on here with the mindset that if the package you depend on is not as you expect, that causes a problem. And that's where people are drawing the correlation to supply chain attacks. In my opinion, with what Moq did, you could mitigate it the same way you mitigate supply chain attacks. That is an option. The last thing I will mention is that the Moq library has actually put out the latest version. If we go and look, has effectively reverted. So this one as of 19 hours ago. So this is kind of, today or within the last day, has effectively reverted the chain out. And I'm going to point out, you'll note here, this is, well, we'll circle back to this. We'll circle back to the version of this. But this one has effectively taken out the analyzer that was causing everybody's problems. Yeah. So yeah, these other perspectives and, things that weren't there. Sorry, 1 second. Might be time for a new mouse. Mine keeps dying on me. Let's see. Concerns were raised. Developer didn't care. I mean, this is really a matter of perspective. Like I agree with Sean in this one. This is hard. Open source maintainers don't have a breadth of knowledge that other people may have. So didn't care is probably the wrong word. Potentially didn't understand the concerns that were being raised might be more accurate. But again, it's without the developer sharing his internal thought process, it's kind of hard to say. This was not thought through technically. Yeah, we'll get to that. Again, I think the big thing for a lot of people was the implementation that this was done in has problems. They should have expected to be nagged about this. I don't like you can nag an open source maintainer till the cows come home, but at the end of the day, unless you're willing to step up and maintain the library, like, again, this is an open source project. The thing that people are forgetting is nothing is stopping you today from forking the project, building the NuGet yourself, and embedding that in your app. You can do that. That is an option. The reason people nag the maintainer is they don't want to do that. Right? So at the end of the day, when people nag maintainers about things, the counter argument is, unless you're willing to step up and maintain a fork, you probably don't have enough skin in the game. That's my opinion. And then he's burned his political capital all at once. And maybe I think at a bare minimum, there is a lot of, I don't know if political capital is the right word, social capital, I would think is potentially better. There's definitely been a lot of trust lost. There's been a large number of developers who said, yeah, we're yanking this from our project starting now. Right? That's kind of a big deal. I do question, my strong opinion in this is that the appropriate thing for people to do is nothing, at least right now. Like, we've seen these things flare up time and time again, but people who, there's some controversy, we're going to yank the library immediately. If you're able to yank the library, something like this that's theoretically fairly well ingrained across your test project and move to something else, that's either a fairly large change or you didn't have a very big investment in it, right? If it's that small of an investment you can change, sure, fine, you can go with the wins. But if it's a big investment and a decent refactor to change, because most of the time, I would argue that my project at Leverage Moq, I'd be editing nearly every unit test class or close to it. Mostly because AutoMocker is probably in there, even if it's not mocked directly. So I'd probably be touching a lot of those if I was going to go in and change it. And yeah, there's refactoring tools and ways to make to speed the process up. But at the end of the day, if you're going to make that kind of big change, you shouldn't be making it on knee-jerk reactions that are, there's controversy on this, therefore we're going to yank it, right? And we'll look at kind of ways I would argue to do it. If you are absolutely concerned, you should be managing your NuGet dependencies already with versioning as appropriate, the same way you would to mitigate a supply chain attack. Again, there is some, this is not a supply chain attack, but there is some similarities to be drawn. You should be managing your dependencies, and if you aren't managing your dependencies, shame on you, fix that. And if you manage your dependencies, you can just not upgrade to this version. Is there something in the 4.20 version that you absolutely need to have? The Moq library's API has been really stable for a very long time. If you're on 4.18, the difference between the public API on 4.18 and 4.20 is pretty small, in my opinion. Do you need upgrade? Probably not. What's the rush, right? Again, libraries will fall out of date if you don't update, but we're talking in the matter of years, not days or months. So my strong opinion is that what people should do right now is absolutely nothing. Okay? Manage your dependencies and wait, and let's see how this plays out. Because we've seen these types of controversies flare up over the years with various projects. Sometimes the change gets reverted, there's an apology, and everything goes back to normal, and everybody who spent all that time refactoring wasted a bunch of time that they didn't need to waste. Right? The other option is maybe Daniel sticks to his guns and says, no, this is the way the project's going to go. I'm the owner of this project. This is how I want to drive the ship. The ship's going this way. You can either get on board or find a different ship. Okay? I mean, as the driver, you get, or the captain, I guess, you get to make those decisions. I don't think that's a problem. And then everybody's then forced to make the choice of, okay, well, do we go the sponsor route or do we go the big refactor route? In either case, the appropriate thing to do is wait. I think jumping fast and early is the wrong reaction. I don't like knee-jerk reactions at all. I've also been on vacation the last couple of days, and then all this happened. I'm like, wow, bad time to be on vacation. So, yes. So my opinion is you should be managing your NuGet stuff, and we're going to look at how to do that here in just a moment. And then here's all this stuff. Advice for open source authors going forward. I mean, I like this, but yeah, I don't know if this is necessarily viable in a lot of cases. Because you can do this and try to rally community support and that kind of things. build better communications, all of that stuff. Again, I don't know how much any of this would have solved any of this problem. Yeah, effectively, think before you leap. Great. Like, I get it. If I was going to start charging for the material design project, that would probably anger a lot of people. Don't worry, that's not on the horizon. Yeah. Yeah, and assume that small bits of negative feedback will be amplified by consumers. Yeah, so this is, I mean, this seems like it's a great revelation, but at the end of the day, this is exactly how beta versions work, right? Small number of people. If you release it and you've got 10 people doing it, this is why on the material design project, I've been real dragging my feet on the 5.0 release, because I know there's only a handful of people touching it. And any bit of feedback from people testing it, for those of you who are, thank you, I appreciate it, is incredibly important, because if one person has a problem on the beta, that probably is like 12 or more tickets on a full release, right? Some people just don't engage with the project beyond the NuGet update window, and so there's no good way to communicate all that stuff to them. So they only show up when there's a problem, and then they hit your issue and discussion boards, and then we go back and forth. Right? I would love it if AI could solve that problem for me, because that's what I want, right? I want the chatbot that says, hey, it looks like you are engaged with a problem that we've already documented over here. Why don't you go look at these docs? That would be amazing if it could do that. Yeah. And there's all of this stuff that has come up many times over. But again, I don't think, I think at the end of the day, there's a big disjoint between the idea of open source and financial stability, right? And I think the anger comes because people see companies using their free open source thing to make lots of money and are wondering why they aren't getting a piece of the pie, right? That's kind of, I think, where a lot of this gets driven from. I do open source work because it's fun and I enjoy it, and I'd be doing it for fun whether I got paid or not. So that's also why, if it seems like sometimes I bounce between projects and I'll get hung up on one thing for a while, it's because I'm doing this because it's a passion project and I like it. It's not, if somebody's paying me to do it, then I have to do what they tell me to do. If I'm doing it for fun, I do what I like, and that's what makes it fun. Kind of like this stream. I stream because it's fun for me, and that's what I enjoy doing. Okay, so let's talk through this. I was also stalling because I was installing a Visual Studio update. Of course it wants me to reboot my system. Well, that's funny. We ain't rebooting right now. That sounds like a bad idea. So here's hoping that we don't get hosed and it fires up and works just fine. So let's take a look at what happened. So on the mock thing, this issue kind of kicked off the firestorm. This is the one I saw cited the most. At least in terms of what things happened. Yeah, so this is the thing of there's a, and hang on, Visual Studio. I really shouldn't have installed a Visual Studio update minutes before. You are so cool. Thank you, Justin Bieber. I should not have been installing Visual Studio updates minutes before my stream. Pro tip, don't ever do that. It's a bad idea. Okay, there we go. Off to the races. Thanks, Visual Studio. Go away. Okay, so here's the setup, right? I've got a standard unit test project. As you can see, I have put a ton of work into it. I have test 1, as every great unit test project starts. I have more or less the default project template with some XUnit, coverlet stuff, SDK stuff, and I've pulled in Moq. And more importantly, I have pulled in Moq version 4.20.0. Okay, just to clarify, 4.20.2 will not do this for you. Okay, and if we run a build, we're gonna wait for a minute, and why you no trigger? Did I turn you off? Yep, I spoiling the end. I'm spoiling my ending. Hang on. Pretend like you didn't see that. Erase it, back up. So, new test project. And I think, yeah. So here we go. So we've got this tiny little line of output here. And this is what people freaked out about, right? Is this MOQ 102 warning. Shows up in your error list. It is a warning. For people who have warnings as errors turned on, where warnings effectively kill your builds, warnings like this are a big no-no, because they cause all kinds of problems. Some people went through and was like, oh, well, we'll just suppress the warning and that kind of thing. The problem is that's not how this works. So the important thing to note here is the source of where this warning is coming from. This is coming from an analyzer. So I've done some work on building out custom analyzers in the past. I'm hoping to have some stream on source generators, analyzers in the future, trying to pull in some guests for that are hopefully smarter than me, which would be awesome. But the idea being that these run as part of csc.exe. This is the C# compiler. This is the injection point that Microsoft gave us to be able to augment the compilation. So when we say source generator, it adds source to the AST, the abstract syntax tree that the compiler sees, not necessarily adding files, even though that's how they visually get surfaced to you. So this is all built in, and if you come in here and look, you will note that underneath my analyzers, we've got this dev looped sponsor link, and we've got this mock code analysis thing that's coming in. So let's take a look at where these come from. So when you see these things in your analyzers list, this is the part I'm shocked people didn't spend more time looking at, right? People tried to suppress the warning and do all of that stuff. If you see an analyzer in this list, right, and you don't like it, and you want it to go away, all you do is you tell the NuGet package not to bring in the analyzers. Problem solved. That's it, right? Using analyzers as a way of implementing any sort of licensing, I think, is inherently fraught with peril and shouldn't be done, because anyone can just turn your analyzer off. Now, unless you're going to try to say, well, we're going to embed useful analyzers along with the one that people hate. That way, if they take it out, they have to take out all the useful ones too. Sure, that's a thing. You could do that, right? You could have maybe some source generators that where the thing won't work without them. Whatever, right? That is a thing you could do. But at the end of the day, if you're going to try to enforce your licensing, as it were, with an analyzer, it can just be turned off. That's so. I'm surprised people didn't come to this solution and people tried to suppress the warning and that kind of thing. It's like, yeah, you could just turn it off. Done. Okay, but let's go look and see how this ends up working. So if we go back to NuGet, let's pick on Moq. Okay, so I'm going to intentionally pick on version 4.20.2. You will note the version that I was bringing into my project is 4.20.0. That is not showing up here. The first key thing for everybody to understand is NuGet.org and NuGet feeds in general are expected to be immutable. Meaning once a version of a package is published, it is there for all time, right? You can unlist it, but deleting it is like a service ticket to Microsoft. And it gets deleted in only some more extreme circumstances where it's like, there's like virus crap stuff in it. Like, only in extreme circumstances will the NuGet feed will that immutability of the feed be violated. It doesn't happen that much, right? So if you want to go look at a version that's unlisted, and you just need the version number. That's it. It's not hard. It's no harder than that. Oh, look at that. Now we're looking at version 4.2.0. Now let's just pop it open, take a look at what's inside of it. Again, I'm shocked more I didn't see more people doing this. People implicitly did it. So here you go. So a NuGet package is made up of a bunch of stuff, right? I won't spoil people with all of the details. The NuGet spec is well documented, but it's important for people to at least understand the high level things. Things that are under the lib directory are things that are DLLs that projects referencing this NuGet package are going to get added as a dependency, right? So if we come in here, I've got packages, mock, and I can start to look at compile time assemblies. I'm going to get mock.dll. So if I come in here, because I was a net 6 or net 7 project, there's the DLL I'm going to get. Great. Nothing fancy. You can kind of look at the PDB information and all that stuff that's wired into it. Great. Wonderful. Anything underneath the analyzers directory is then going to be loaded up as an analyzer. Great. And we can take a look at what these analyzers end up doing. And if people wanted to, you can go ahead and pull down the DLLs. There's various decompilers and whatnot. People can pop them open in, and you can take a look and see what all is in there. The big thing that got a lot of people a little twitchy, does it show it here? Yeah. Is this version of the package brought in an additional dependency, this dev loop sponsor link. And if you go through and take a look at what's inside of that analyzer, the mock analyzer itself doesn't do a lot. There's not a lot there. What it does do is it shells out to this dev loop sponsored link NuGet package as well. And if you go and take a look at this guy, and we take a look at his project website, and this is one of the things that kind of raised people's hackles a little bit, is the source for this is not open. This is a closed source application. And if you decompile it, it's also obfuscated. For people unfamiliar with it, any sort of IL.NET library can be cracked open with a decompiler and looked at. And in most cases, it looks kind of like C#. Hey, you know what? We're going to just show this. So my go-to tool of choice is a somewhat obsoleted project that has been recently reborn, called dnspy. But regardless, pick your favorite decompiler, doesn't matter. Right? So if we come in here, we can take a look at, so this is the mock.code analysis DLL that came from the analyzer. And we can start to read through this. It's worth noting, this is decompiled C#. So it's a guess from the IL what the original C# looked like. It is almost guaranteed not what the original C# looked like, but decompilers kind of have to guess in some cases of going, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. Like, nobody writes their attributes like this. It was literally string. But whatever, decompiler has to guess. So you can see it does some stuff, but then more importantly, it goes to this base class where all of the meat and potatoes actually happens. And you'll know when we get to this, immediately things start looking ugly. And things start to look like generated. And if you go in here, you could start mucking with trying to reverse it, and you run into, ugly Unicode stuff, right? But here's the thing. With obfuscation, it's not encryption. Right? Obfuscation is making things hard to read, not impossible. And given enough time, you can go through and start giving names to all of these symbols, because part of what the obfuscator does is it gives everything ugly looking names. But we could go through and give them friendly looking names and start to slowly reverse the thing back into its original state of where it was. And there are de-obfuscators that aim to do exactly that. And it gets really trivial if you know the obfuscator in question that did the work. Because for every obfuscator out there, there is probably 2 or 3 de-obfuscators to reverse it, which is just wonderful. But all that to say, the only reasons I've ever seen to obfuscate code are business in nature and not technical in nature, right? Because from a technical perspective, a motivated person with enough time on their hands will eventually get through your obfuscation, right? All you've done is slow them down and trying to make the time not worth it, right? If somebody has to spend, 3 weeks de-obfuscating it, they're going to go, is it really worth 3 weeks of my time? probably not, move on, right? That's all it is just trying to be a deterrent, nothing more. The only good reasons for obfuscating have all been, that I've seen, have all been business related, not technical. Of, you know, we have to do this because, you know, legal liability, blah, 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 whatever, right? Not a technical reason. I'm not a lawyer. I won't speak to that. But that's really, in my opinion, the only reason to obfuscate is you should have a business driver for it, not a technical one, because the technical ones are like, yeah, it doesn't actually do much. There's tools to do it, to automate the process for people, and it's not actually going to stop them. It's just going to annoy them. And yeah, so this was the thing that kind of raised people's things. But regardless of how this is all structured, the important thing, though, is to look at how the NuGet packages work. And specifically, understanding the idea that the various assets that are inside of a NuGet package, the build assets, the native assets, the content files, the analyzers, the build ones, the runtime ones, all of these are individual switches inside that NuGet package that you can turn on and off as needed. This is important to understand because oftentimes people think NuGet packages are, I add package reference with version and I'm done. No, it is more complicated than that. You should think through these of what do you want, because if you do nothing, you get everything, right? Is everything what you want? Well, let me rephrase. You don't get everything. You get the default set, which is what it does, behaves the way people would expect. But you can turn stuff off. This is where I'm just blown away that people would use an analyzer for anything licensing related, because my default setting was I'll just go turn the analyzer off. Problem solved. The other thing is Daniel commented that this analyzer isn't expected to run under CI/CD conditions. Without digging further to know for sure of what that means, there are plenty of libraries that are set up to look at like environment variables and build variables to detect when you're in a CI/CD situation. Specifically, like a lot of approval test libraries will do this to know whether they should pop the diff viewer in an interactive type situation versus we're in a pipeline. We probably shouldn't be popping a diff viewer. That's a bad idea, right? No one's here to look at it. So I would suspect it's probably using a similar technique. Don't know for sure, but that would be my suspicion. Because that would be that'd be how I would implement it. Because there's libraries out there that are specifically designed for trying to detect those cases. Again, now you're once again building on another library. Great. Let's see. So NuGet package, measuring, including and excluding assets. Is there anything else that's important to note? I'm trying to think. I had a whole thing thought up in my head and now I'm blanking. I blame the vacation, not the lack of dew. There's been plenty of dew. Oh, let's just real quick discuss NuGet packages, because this is something I think a lot of people don't realize is NuGet packages themselves are just zip files. So if you were to come in here and download package, right? Boom. Great. Pop that. I'm going to just grab this and put it in a different directory really quick. Yeah. No significance. So this NuGet package, right? All you have to do to take a look in the NuGet package, and all the NuGet package explorer is doing, look at that. Poof, you're in. It's not that advanced. It's really not, right? There's the kind of stuff you'd expect to see. The signature, the new spec is your manifest file. This contains a XML-based representation of what all is in this package. That's it. There's your analyzers. There's your lib, right? There's a package with a service bundled in here. Might have to look at what this is. I don't actually recognize this extension. Not entirely clear on that one. I'd have to go look that one up. But for the purposes of these packages, this is all there is. When you install a NuGet package, what ends up happening is NuGet downloads this the NuPKG file, the NuGet package itself, into your local NuGet cache. It then unzips and extracts it Actually, I can just show that to you. Okay, so for example, here is my local NuGet cache. All right, if I jump down to Moq, turns out when you have an M and Microsoft makes NuGet packages, you got to do some scrolling. MOQ, right? Boom. Right? You can see every version of the package I've ever downloaded because these are the ones that are downloaded and cached. So you can see 420 is here, and there's the unzipped contents. There's the original NuPKG. There is a hash to be able to go through and do some validation on it. But when you go to do a NuGet restore, if the package is already found in your local cache, it's not going to download a new one. This is the reason it's able to make that assertion that it doesn't need to go download a new one if it finds it in the local cache is because the NuGet feed is immutable, right? If version 420 could be changed, right? If that could be changed in any way, it would have to go out and check every time. But instead of having to make that call back to NuGet.org, the local NuGet exe or the .NET CLI can go, nah, I see it in my local cache. I'm just going to use that instead, right? For reference, this is also a way that somebody can do a supply chain attack. Don't do that. But it will then just reference that local package. Okay, next thing. Because I mentioned earlier, what people should be doing in all of this is they should be managing their NuGet packages. If your way of managing NuGet packages is right-click, manage NuGet packages for a project or solution, this is fine, right? But it's important for you to understand that if this is your only way of interacting with NuGet packages, you are missing out on a lot, right? There is more going on than what this little GUI can show you, right? And specifically, the unfortunate useful bits are usually hidden down in this bottom area, right? Where things like, oh, there's a new dependency, right? Or that window that pops up when you install a new version that everyone just clicks yes on and doesn't actually read, like every other EULA window. Yeah, that one. It's kind of worth when you install a package to maybe just glance over the dependencies. Just glance and see if they make sense, right? So, for example, 420.2, you will note, does not include that additional dependency that 420.0 has. And you'll note that because this version is unlisted, it's not going to show up here, right? By definition, when you unlist a package, the only way somebody's going to get that package is if they explicitly type in that version number somewhere. It's not going to show up in any of the searches. So unlisting is mostly deleted. Mostly, not really. Mostly. But you will note there's a nice little warning here saying, hey, your package source mapping is turned off. Do you want to configure that? It's like, yeah, that'd be a good idea. That'd be a good idea. The problem is it's going to go me here, and I don't want to do it here because that does the package source mapping for like my my global NuGet config. I want to do it for my repo because if you're working in like a corporate issued machine where your package sources are always going to be the same, that's fine. I prefer it to be in a file that's checked into my repo where I can see it, where I can manage it. So let's do that. Hang on 1 second. I got to get myself into a terminal. Boom. Okay. So I got a terminal here. Right. So .NET new NuGet config. And you'll note my Visual Studio refreshed when I did that. The reason is because it goes, hang on, there's new config coming. I need to do something, right? So we're gonna go solution, add existing item. And now at the root of my repository, I've got this NuGet config. If you don't have one of these, I highly, highly suggest you add. This is a very good thing to add. This is one of the ways you mitigate supply chain attacks. Again, you can use a similar technique if you want to pin your mock version. Mock thing is, once again, not a supply chain attack, but you can mitigate some of the concerns people have doing the same thing. Anyway, okay, so you'll note here, this gives you a way to specify where you're going to be pulling your NuGet packages from. So if somebody was going to do something nefarious and go like AIP, or I guess that's a top level, the API NuGets.org, right? That's bad. We don't want to be pulling our packages from somewhere like that. That will end up in not a good place. If you would like a reasonable example, in my templates one, NuGet config. So this is more akin to what I prefer to do. So I'm just going to copy this. I'm going to paste it here, right? So the big difference between the .NET new template that's there and something that's in one of my .NET templates is the addition of this newer package source mapping. So the idea here, it's similar to the original one. Clear ensures that there are no sources inherited from another config. Because your NuGet configs, there's usually two-ish of them in play, maybe. Depends on what you've got, because you've usually got one at your user level and then one at your repository, right? But somebody could inject more or mutate one of those, and you don't want that. So clear ensures that anything that was loaded previously, we're just going to ignore those. Toss them. They don't matter, right? If somebody has something set up in a user level NuGet config, we don't care, right? Their NuGet source, not a thing. Doesn't matter. We're going to configure this repo the way this repo needs to work, which again, I think this is a better way of setting things up. Next, we added NuGet.org because it's really hard to build anything nowadays without referencing NuGet.org because that's where everything lives. But you may need to reference additional things, right? Maybe somebody's hosting scene packages on GitHub. Maybe they've got an Azure Artifacts feed, whatever, right? Set this up. Now, the problem with just having a list of sources is there's not a link between which packages come from which source, right? Because I've got a bunch of packages here, and how does it know that X unit I expect to come from NuGet.org and not from some other source, right? Because just having a source list is good. This means I'm only coming from sources that I've trusted, but what happens if one of those sources gets compromised or somebody gets in the middle or whatever, right? How do I make sure that I only pull things from there? So the idea then would be something along the lines of, boom, boom, boom. Andrew, welcome. Something like this, right? X unit star. Is enabled and there are multiple package sources with the same key, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, so hang on, stop your whining. So really this would end up being more like this. So that's what it's whining about. And this is kind of dumb to do it this way, but whatever. Example. The idea here though is it explicitly calls out that any package that matches this particular pattern, in this case starts with X unit, is going to come from NuGet.org. And this key here needs to match this key up here, right? This doesn't have to be NuGet.org, right? It can be, just straight NuGet if you want. It doesn't really matter. But what's important is that these keys match. Because now it knows, okay, when I'm going to restore X unit, the only source I'm allowed to go and get it from is this one. Right? So it then cuts down on where someone could theoretically get a package injected in on you. And you can see down here on my template, and I did put a link in. Excellent. On my template, I leave in just a couple samples of, here, if you had, your Contoso packages being hosted, right? And I think I pulled this sample shamelessly right off the Microsoft Docs. But how you might configure it up and say, okay, my Contoso libraries are always going to come from this one. And, .com.org, again, names are arbitrary. But then going through and setting these up so that you manage them. This is very important to do. So if you are at all concerned about managing your supply chain, you should be setting up a NuGet config on your repositories. Okay, next thing we should look at, managing the NuGet packages. So I am well aware that most people, when they go to manage their NuGet packages, it's more or less right click, manage NuGet packages. This is how I tend to do it too. So I will throw myself under the bus on this one as well. It's because it's so bloody easy, right? Pretty GUI, nice searching. I get to see pretty icons. Everyone loves pretty pictures. It's wonderful. But the inevitability, if this is your only way of managing your NuGet packages, is it is quite common to run into a situation where some projects have different versions of a dependency. And oftentimes that's what this little consolidate tab is for. If you click at the solution level, you'll get this little tab and it'll tell you if you've got different versions of a package installed on different projects. Now, this works, but this also involves you opening the tool and clicking this tab. I am way too lazy and way too stupid for that. So, better option. Okay, there is a thing called centralized package management, and we'll just .NET I mean, I'm streaming, so yeah, I broke Bing. 500 error from Bing. That's not right. Let's try. Okay, we're gonna Bing with Google real quick. That's not supposed to happen. Yeah, so I guess now I can say that this is just proof that Microsoft really doesn't want you to know about this feature. It's a bold-faced lie, but I can say it now because it looks cool. So, centralized package management. This is the cool thing. This is the cool thing that you should be setting up on your repositories as well. So, this goes into a history, blah, 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 blah. Here's what's important. You need the enabled section, right? So you need a directory packages.props file, and you need it to look like this. And if you want, you can just straight copy this, like this. Yay! Okay, so let's go here, and we're going to actually create one of these things. Add new item. Directory.packages.props. The name matters. You may not pick any other name. And then you save it, and then you reopen it. Because for whatever reason, when you do the new item, because you set text, it sets the language mode to text. And so when you close off and reopen it, it then looks at the extension and goes, oh, wait, this is a props file. You want to open it as XML. Thank you. Right? So this does two things. One, a props file is an MS build file that lets you set up things like property groups. Holy cow. Sorry, I'm just really impressed. Dang, if Copilot could rename all of those package references to package versions, they would be on point. Yeah, Copilot go brrr. Yeah, so Copilot, could you just do a little better? Let's see if it's got any other suggestions. Do you have one that involves package version? No, it's too stupid to figure that out. It doesn't know. Okay, we're going to type one here in a minute and see if it can then figure it out. But the first thing is you need to turn on this Boolean. This is one that will actually change the behavior of how the NuGet restore works and say, okay, rather than managing my NuGet packages on every project individually, I would like to manage my NuGet package versions in one place for the whole repository. Right? There's a handful of files that are there for customizing your build process that are picked up implicitly by name. By the virtue of MS Build walking through your directory hierarchy, looking for files that match this name, directory packages.props is one of them. Okay, so let's actually pretend like we're doing this thing real. Okay, Copilot, I'm going to give you a chance. I'm going to give you a chance to be awesome. You're getting one chance, Copilot. This is all I'm going to give you. The package version, right? So no, not package reference, package version, right? We set it here. Now, Copilot, figure it out. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Do the next one. It's not quite right, Copilot. You were doing so good. I was rooting for you. I was really rooting for you. Let's Control-Alt-Enter. Come on, Copilot. You can do it. You can do it. I believe in you. Synthesizing zero solution. Nah, I don't believe in you anymore. Okay, so we come in here. Right? We go whoop-ah! And we change all package reference to package version. I probably should have done a find and replace. Because that would have been smarter. But you know what? I need practice typing. My typing skills suck, and typing in front of people is a great way to remember that you suck at typing. Okay. And we don't need this. Now, this gives you a centralized way of referencing your packages. And every package that you use in your solution needs to be recorded here. And if you like your sanity, I highly recommend you alphabetize them. If you don't like your sanity, put them in whatever order makes sense. Doesn't matter. And you can group them. You can do different item groups if that makes you feel better. Like, hey, these are going to be my testing ones. These are my non-testing ones or whatever, right? You don't have to put them all in one item group. Mix and match, have fun. Do whatever makes sense to you. But then each of the projects in your solution then need to explicitly tell it which packages they want to use. Not necessarily which versions, but which packages. So we take a look here, right? Down inside of our project file, we then go back to our package reference, but we only include the package name, not its version at all. Right? So if we come back here, so we go package reference, and we get rid of all these versions. Right? Get rid of that. Get rid of that. Get rid of that. Get rid of that. And frankly, we can just do this and get rid of all that. Get rid of this. Get rid of this. Get rid of this. And we're off to the races. Right? And if we come back over here, just rebuild for sanity, because, you know, my test one is really important here. But if we go and look at our dependencies, see the same set of dependencies that we had before. Right? But we haven't specified any versions on our CS project. So this gives us a much more convenient way to manage all of our packages in one place. Again, these two things, for people who actually want to be serious about managing their dependencies, I think these are invaluable resources that you should be leveraging. Right? On my .NET new templates, I go to the effort of making sure that that is on all of my templates, because it's that valuable. When I do a new project, I always want these things on. Sometimes I forget about it until later, and then I go, ah, crap, now I got to go turn it on. And it's always easier to do at the beginning. It's kind of a pain if you've got an existing project with a ton of dependencies. So the other thing to note is there are overrides, and I won't spend a ton of time diving into it, but if you run into a situation where a particular project needs to either like pin a particular version, or it's like, you know what, project B really needs to be on this other version, right? This one really needs to stay here. You can do a version override at the project level. And it's important to note, it's not a version attribute anymore, it's a version override. You have to be real explicit and say, yeah, I know the centralized package thing said that we were going to be on version 4, but this particular project really needs to be on version 3 for insert reason here, right? Doesn't matter what. So you can go through and override them where needed. But in general, I would still argue this is better to have everybody be on a centralized version and have only a few stragglers override if there's, you know, things that need to be a little different, because everybody will come up with examples in their project of, oh, well, my project can't use it because, you know, this. It's like, no, you can still use it. Just go and add in the overrides where necessary. It then goes even further. You can step up higher, and it's worth noting, this is only available in 17.4 or higher, and it requires the Net 7 SDK. So if you were on latest of all the things, right? Emphasis on, you kind of have to be on latest of all the things at this point. You can go up to a global level, right? Because having to, like, for example, things like maybe Newtonsoft.json, or if you've got Git versioning turned on, there's occasionally NuGet package that you're like, every project needs this, right? Maybe you've got a company analyzer that you just want included in all of your projects, right? There are cases for it. You can go all the way up and do a global package reference, which the only difference between the global package reference and the centralized package reference is the global one, you don't need to add anything in your CS project. You just get it for free. That's kind of cool, right? So again, you probably only use that in certain situations where it's like maybe an analyzer package or similar. Like, it's kind of rare that you've got like a DLL that you want referenced by all your things. But I don't know, maybe if you've got when you go through and turn on centralized package management, if you find yourself putting the same thing in all of them, yeah, maybe look at this. Again, assuming you are on 17.4, Net SDK 70100 or better, right? Which this is the Net 7 SDK is no longer preview. This is what got launched last November. So if you are on latest STS, not LTS, you're gold, right? But it is worth noting, you do need to make sure that your whole team is on 17.4. But at this point, like, for me, when a Visual Studio update comes, I install it. Maybe I wait a couple days because I'm on vacation and I wasn't writing code for a few days. That's a possibility. It does happen, despite what my coworkers will tell you. And then you go through and do it. Or maybe I was writing code on my other machine, and so this machine didn't get updated. That's also a possibility. Go either way. Yeah, okay. Centralized package management, checking notes. Yeah. Kenny's mocking me for how I vacation. So, side note, I will tell you this. The same thing that I usually tell most people. When you leave work and go home at the end of the day, you should do your relaxation activity. My relaxation activity tends to be writing code, oftentimes open source. If that's not your relaxation activity, that's fine. You do your relaxation activity, but mine just happens to resemble my work. And sometimes the line gets real blurry real fast. Or maybe that's the Mountain Dew talk. It could be either. Okay. I think that's everything on the centralized package management. Let's do real code now. I think. Let's do real code. Okay, so I'm going to go back and pick on... Okay, real quick. Just in summary, for all of the mock controversy, my strong recommendation for everybody is to literally do nothing and just let's wait and see what happens. Right? You can't spend your time doing all of the things. Yeah, Joe, I did see Kenny's message. Kenny, I did have one thing I will message you on that I wanted to follow up on, because one of your bullet points I hadn't seen mentioned in any of the posts I had looked at, and so I'm curious what the source of it was. But I think I may have answered my own question on it. But yes, I agree. I think it was very much handled poorly. It was the 15-day one. Was the one that I was looking at. I think I may have actually found the source of where that comes from. I spent a little bit of time poking at the mock NuGet package and looking at its analyzer and running Fiddler and seeing what process it starts and all of that. And to be clear, right? Let me go back. Tab, 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 tab. This guy here. There is this write-up here that he did explaining sort of what is happening. And he also comments that you can run Fiddler and look at the traffic. I ran Fiddler and looked at the traffic. I agree that his description matches the behavior that I saw. Okay? So I don't think anything's intentionally being hidden. And there's a comment from him somewhere else that if people are wanting to integrate with their library, that he will provide them source so that they can look at it and feel confident of how it's working and all that. Yeah, I had started pulling it and pulling the traffic and looking through it, how things were set up. And his description of how it works, I believe, is accurate. I also believe that people's description of this implementation is really problematic in a lot of ways is also very accurate. But again, at least at present, he pulled it back, and I'm not going to jump ship and move off of Moq right away. Right? Like, that's not a thing I'm going to do. I am not going to go rewrite all my libraries. I will say, for anybody who's following me, I did start, where is it? Why is it showing up? Refresh. There it is. I did start a little library that I was playing with. So I took a lot of the Moq source, renamespaced it, cleaned up a bunch of stuff. Yeah, and I think I found where it was looking at Kenny to pull it down. And because I was looking at how it was actually working and sniffing the traffic and watching what was flying back and forth. I did start down the process of going, don't look at this as a alternative to Moq, right? This is Kevin wanting to have an experiment on mocking frameworks because I have an idea that I want to try, right? Not sure yet if it's actually going to fly or not, but I wanted to try it. I've got this source generator idea. Like, I think I can make this work. It works in my head, and I was crazy enough this afternoon to think that I might be able to make it work on, in real code. Got it. Thank you, Kenny. That's what I was wondering of where it came from, because I saw some stuff in there about that Quiet Days thing, and that, yeah, it definitely, his implementation came across as very malware-like. I will say, there is a very fine line. I would consider the behavior of a lot of sales/marketing people and the behavior of a lot of virus malware writers to be very much in sync in a lot of cases. Like, for all of my marketing and sales friends, I'm sorry. I disapprove of a lot of your actions. So hopefully none of them are watching. I think I bore them, and hopefully they've signed out by now. But in a lot of cases, I really I don't like sales. They do things that they don't feel good, and I don't like that. So, anyway. Thank you, Kenny. Yeah, see, these ones don't surprise me, because this set of environment variables to know if you're in a CI/CD process are somewhat well-known-ish. There's a lot of these ones that people have built out. I think he's missing one. I'm pretty confident there's at least one more missing from this list. Yeah, this is the other thing that I'd be a little hesitant for anybody who thinks about using analyzers for implementing licensing stuff. I would caution you against it, because it would not shock me. Microsoft already kind of has a problem with analyzers and source generators slowing down the build process, and people flagging the compiler and saying, "Why is my compiler being stupid?" And they're like, "We're running a third party's code. Like, their code can do stupid crap," right? you could put in a source generator that has a task delay of 15 minutes and kill everybody's build time by 15 minutes. Everyone would hate you, but that's a thing you could do. And it would not shock me if at some point there was tooling or stuff that was put in place that allowed Visual Studio users to like either disable individual analyzers that do network calls or take too long or whatever, right, from running. Or they start blocking APIs inside of it. Like that would not surprise me, because there's certain things they want people to be able to write analyzers and source generators, but they want them to be fast and enhance a user's experience, not detract from it, right? And so it would not shock me if Microsoft, not necessarily in response to this, but just in general, starts implementing features to make it more difficult for people to write bad source generators and analyzers, because they don't want people writing bad source generators and analyzers. That's bad for everyone. So, let's see. So, hey, a little bit off subject, but you know of any GitHub repo, you can add ones, and you can view the code in VS Code in the browser, so it becomes... Oh, interesting. Well, let's try it. Interesting. So, not officially provided by GitHub, but it looks, it's very similar to what, I'm curious to check this out. So it's not unlike the, so the other thing that I often will do is switch github.com to GitHub dev, or the period key at the root of the repo will do the same thing. And you get what looks to be a similar-ish, like, it's VS Code in the browser, but I'm curious what this one is. I'm curious, this one, interesting. So some of this stuff looks to predate the Microsoft one. Huh. This is interesting. I'm going to... Thank you, Alex. This is interesting. I don't think I've come across this project before. I'm going to look into this a little more, because I'll be curious to look at it. This one here, the big limitation, even though it's effectively VS Code in the browser, is you're running in a state where you've got VS Code, but you've got no compute. So that means that any extension that requires any sort of compute type resources, you can't use, which is a little problematic. But you'll note I do get things like my GetLens or various other ones that come through. But still, I'd be curious to take a look at how that one is running and see what it looks like, because it's clearly very popular. I mean, anything with 20,000 stars it can't be that bad, right? Okay, so I want to take a look at a couple things here, because there's a handful of stuff going on. So I haven't done material design stuff in a while. So I left a comment here on this particular one. This pull request, and I'll just verbalize my thinking on it. So the intent here, data grids, and a couple of my colleagues have been subjected to this rant from me over the last week. Of data grids, in my opinion, are the most complicated control in all of WPF. They are always shown off as something simple, and I firmly believe they are the most complicated thing out there. You should not start with them. If you're just starting out and struggling with data grid, don't feel bad. It is bloody complicated. The idea here, though, is the end user is wanting the ability to have a different string format for the binding on a text column for view and edit mode, right? So string format on a binding lets you do string formatty stuff, right? And maybe you want edit mode to be, showing the full like decimal number, but in read-only mode, maybe you want to tack on like a currency formatter or something, right? I could see use cases for that. The thing is generally when you want to separate these two things out, the better solution is to go to a data grid template column, because a template column lets you do whatever the heck you want. You get full control. And the problem is you get full control, which means you have to like do stuff. And all of the niceties that come with the other columns get dropped. Now, in this case, this particular one is adding in a new property on the Material Design data grid text column. This has the same name as the, let me make this bigger. I want to make you, how do I collapse you? Can I not collapse you? I want to collapse the sidebar. How do I make the sidebar go away? Stupid. Stupid. Okay, we'll do this. There, we'll do that. So the Material Design data grid text column is the same name as the WPF text column. So in XAML, it's usually not that big of a deal because you always do, namespace colon type name, or unless you're using the default namespace, and then it's just typing. So there's, at least inside of the XAML, there's not a lot of ambiguity, which is where most people would end up using it. Right? And so this does a bit of work to go through and grab the binding that's specified on the column, tweak the string format on it, and apply it to the text blocks for the read-only side of things. And it bothers me a little bit because I could see people wanting more than just the one property. Like, if string format's a thing, why is converter not a thing? Because that's, if string format doesn't work, your next various thing is to go there. Or why not, I guess target null would make a lot of sense. And so I'm kind of curious how useful this ends up being. And that's what bothers me. And the whole reason that this exists is because if we look at, so it's not obvious. I spent a little time looking into this, and I couldn't make up my mind on it. So I'm partially verbalizing this so that I can hopefully make up my mind on it. So the idea here is this generate element. This is the method that's being override in the Material Design version of the column. But you'll note it calls into the base. So what does the base do? Right? The base generate element straight up news up a text block, right? Does this sync properties thing where it's setting up some of the font stuff, right? Oh, here, stay there. There, that way when I go back, I'm now pinned at this location. I should do this. There. It then applies a style, right? Where it goes through and picks out the style largely based on is editing and how that's set up. Great, fine. And then it applies the binding to the text property. And this is functionally the bit that, because it's not virtual and easily overridable, there's no good way to get in at this guy and go through and do it. Because this binding here is the one that's set on the column. And this binding property gets used in both the view and the edit case. And the proposal here is to allow a different binding to be on the view case than the edit case. But if you want a different binding on the view case, I really think that what you actually want is a template column. Otherwise, like, this is a nicety, but it handles a very isolated use case. And I don't know if that use case warrants bringing this new property onto here. That's my thinking. Sorry, 1 second. Why must I do this? Where is my manager button? Yeah, thank you. Yeah, go away, thank you. There, boom. I need to update my links. Normally my hotkey jumps me straight to my stream manager, but apparently in this case, not so much. So there's that one. I think it might, so one, J Booth, if you're watching this, thank you. I again, especially after the rants earlier about people contributing to open source projects, I very much do appreciate the pull request, but I don't know if it's the right solution. And part of being a maintainer is realizing that anything you ship, you have to maintain. And I think it's easier to tell people we should move on to something like you should be using a different control if that's the behavior that you want, of separating the view and the edit side, I think. Okay, so I think we're going to come back to this one here in a minute. But so the 5.0 milestone that's coming, there's this brush rename, there's the 5.0 breaking changes, there's this flipper work that's all in here of how it's going. I would like to get, I don't know if this IME misplaced is actually something we can control. There are these things here that I was going to go through and give it a shot at some point. I have a friend who actually runs his system in Japanese, and I was like, perfect. I need your help. I need somebody who can communicate with me, but also knows Japanese, which is not exactly an easy thing to come by in some cases. But I wanted to give this pop-up control thing a chance, because we've had various things, people complaining about the dialog host in the material design project. And at the end of the day, it boils down to the idea, because it's a pop-up, it behaves like a pop-up, right? One of the workarounds is just don't use the default style, use the embedded dialog host, and then it goes away. Ah, thank you. Andrew, I forgot, you actually probably fall into this case too. Can you tell me, for this IME box, because my buddy who does Japanese was able to test it and confirm, do you run into problems with it not lining up with the appropriate text box in pop-ups in like WinUI 3? Is this specific to WPF? Like, did they fix it in newer stuff and that's why? Because it seems like it's a Windows feature that is that's like WPF was forgotten about and just never touched. Because I was trying to see, I was mucking around with it on my system, but given that I can't read anything, never faced that problem. Okay. Interesting. Interesting. Okay. Because it looks like the documentation that was linked to here showed a couple ways of going through and dealing with the pop-up. And it seems like the issue is related to the WinProc messages around focus and making sure, because the pop-up still gets its own window handle, making sure that Windows knows that that's where the focus is moved to. I think, based upon reading these. Because all of these come down to this idea of driving where that active window is. Otherwise, it's like that pop-up gets confused and just like zeros on the monitor, which is not useful. Can you post that link? Yes, I'd be happy to. So here's the issue link, and then here's the reasonings down here. So I put it in the milestone just because I figured, I'm like, you know what? These are not terribly difficult. The hard part for me is, I'm actually glad you're here. This is very, very convenient. Actually, why am I doing this here? Toolkit. And let me make sure I'm on. Okay. In the dialog host, because this is where things get a little more complicated on my part. And it all comes down to this dialog host might be the most complicated control in the material design project. Is we do some, no, stop it. Stop. I know those are the keystrokes I pressed, but don't do what I meant, not what I typed. Where's our open method? Is we intentionally try to go through and focus the pop-up. But the way we are ending up doing the focus is just with the focus manager and trying to call move focus. But it appears that those links are specifically around grabbing the window handle for the pop-up and telling Windows that that is the focused window. I think that's the disjoint between my library and what those documents are saying. But at some point, I want to plug that in and then send some builds over to my buddy and say, can you just test these and tell me what they do? Because I tried to get my system into the right state, and I ended up just getting myself annoyed with my system. So I figured it was easier for me to build private builds and send it to a buddy and say, can you test this for me? And then, like, send me screenshots and whatnot. Because I think this is what's causing the problem. I think. But again, as somebody who doesn't run into this and doesn't rely on that window for much, it's a much harder for me to attempt it. Okay. The flipper thing, I'm just going to ignore for the moment because I don't want to think about. This guy here, I was contemplating going and kind of attacking some of this. Is we've got this numeric up-down thing set up that I was contemplating doing here, because this is a common control that has been requested many times over. I'll post in the issue if I find something. Awesome, Andrew. Thank you very much. I'm glad you are around. That is, having people with your type of expertise is invaluable. Okay. Also, for anybody, hang on, Andrew. We got to do this real quick. You have a link to your. Oh, it doesn't show it there. Hang on. I will find it. I have it. Boom. Here. For everybody who likes my content, you should probably go and check Andrew out. There. Boom. He does YouTube stuff too. And it's quite useful. So go check him out. He deserves to subscribe. And correct me if I'm wrong, Andrew. A lot of your stuff tends to be WinUI 3 focused. At least those are the videos I find myself watching. But yes, everyone go check him out. Also, he's just a really quality developer too. Okay, so I was contemplating this numeric up-down. The other one that I think I might look at is this auto suggestion box, because I still have faith in WinUI 3. I believe in it too. Everybody, like, I want it to be the WPF killer. It's hard to trust Microsoft when they say it's going to be the WPF killer with, UWP, WinUI, WinUI 2. It's like, I've heard this story before, guys. I'm waiting to see it. But the last couple times I've played with it, I did it. And I do actually have a branch of the Material Design project where I started on a port to WinUI 3. So I've got myself far enough to realize, oh yeah, we could make this happen. Do I want to invest the next 3 weeks worth of time that I know it's going to take to actually do a full port? I questioned doing a port to Avalonia, but then somebody else did it for me. So that worked out well. So, and as much as I would love to go to a third-party library, for now, I'll stick with my WPF. It's just, it works so well. I keep contemplating also a thing to like Maui, but that's a very different beast. Very different beast. Okay, so this auto suggest text box also got my attention because this kind of ran into the same thing Joe and I hit last week, where we were wanting to have a box that you type in that would give you suggestions and in theory be able to do the chips. This one doesn't do the chips, right? The screenshot and demo here, like, it is kind of combo box-esque in how it works. And it's not bad. And I was playing with it, and I was like, this one might be fun to get in. But trying to decide where we go. Let's maybe pick on the auto suggest box one first, because that feels like let's see, check out, do the thing. Okay, so we're gonna go here, and I think what I want to do is I'm way too far behind. I need to, let's see. I got too many branches checked out, so I don't need any of these branches. So whack all those branches. Delete. Yes, go away. I will tell a fun story. So before I went on vacation, I was helping one of my teammates out, and I went through and we were struggling with some pipeline failures. And I was like, oh, okay. I was like, I realized the fix is forthcoming, but we kind of had the chicken the egg problem where it's like I need the fix in so that I can do I need the fix in so that the pipeline works, but I need it to just like bypass the pipeline on the thing. So I force pushed it in and then promptly broke the pipeline, pushed the wrong thing. Yeah, it was a mess. So lesson learned, don't be like me. Okay, so I think what I'd like to do is, let's see, could not get pull requests from, I don't care. I got too many remotes added, don't I? Let's see. So collapse that. So sorry, I gotta clean up my stuff a little bit for the moment. I don't think I'm there. Okay, so I would like this on master. Rebase. So I'm doing this because I suspect I did a bad thing the other day where I file scoped all the namespaces. I'm sorry. And I have a strange suspicion I broke stuff on people. So we're gonna, I think, just clean this up. And I think what we're gonna do is blindly take this side for almost everything. Actually, you know what? Let's take everything from here, because that should leave me in a working state, and then I'll just go and file scope this. So fields view model. Let's see. Probably the same thing here. Is there anything? Why is that a conflict? I don't understand why that's a conflict. Okay, continue. Okay, and then here, that's fine. Again, the big thing, so what's not clear from these diffs because I have white space turned off, is the fact that we've got namespace. So you'll know it's a little weird because that's not actually like, yeah, so. Which is why I kind of felt like I should go through and do this. Why? I don't think we actually need any of these, do we? All of these should be handled by default, so we actually don't want that change. So we'll clean that up too while we're in here. Okay, so now let's just make sure it works. And then we'll find out if I have push permissions. And on the note of open source maintainers, if you are going to open a PR against an open source project from a fork, it is generally nice to leave the box checked on GitHub that allows the maintainers to push back to your fork. You're effectively giving commit access to your fork to a bunch of people, but that's not usually that bad of a thing. Okay, so what is going on here? This is a lie. What is going on? Yeah, I was gonna say this feels like something went awry on the merge. There. Okay, so there's that. Right, so that view model is probably foobarred up. So I think that's domain, fields view model. Yeah, so that's... What the heck did you do? What did you do? This ain't right. Let's go back and look. Boom, boom. So that's broken there. Go back a little further. Broken there. Broken there. Broken there. I'm specifically looking at this line is what's triggering me. Oh, so I botched it on the very first one. So this just needs to go away along with all of these. Okay. So if I just do this, that formats and everyone's happy. I'm probably missing a name property that's supposed to be there. Oh, and this is lacking then a class name, which is this, because that got dropped. So that goes there. That goes like that. That goes like that. And then this name property got dropped. So that needs to come back and go. Does foobar have any relation to foobar? That is a good question, Joe. I've always assumed the FOO version was just a politer way of saying the other one. Sometimes I guess I've seen some people use it because FOO is oftentimes used as just a placeholder for I don't know what to call this thing right now. And when you need a second variable, it's often bar. And I've seen when people reach for a third variable that they don't know what to name, they'll either go with BAZ, B-A-Z, or foobar, F-O-O-B-A-R. So I guess I've seen it used in that case as well. Okay, so that got doubled up. Fields test object. That's just an issue there. Okay, so I think that cleans that up. We're gonna get this in compile and then we may do some more cleanup. That is my assumption of the origin of it. But I'd like to get this thing prepped to merge. This is tests. Okay. So this is... Okay, so I want the first error. Unexpected preprocessor directive. Okay, so something went wrong here in text field assist. Specifically at the end. It's probably that. Or at least that's part of it. That'll handle the first one. Down here. Actually, I think this is probably not what's expected. I'm curious what this is supposed to be doing. Like, what is the point of this? Can I burn it to the ground? This is unused. We'll check this. I don't know if I've introduced a change or what, but it's possible that my rebase introduced a change that I didn't intend to have here. One of the things that I may end up doing is I will oftentimes squash all the commits as an easier way to view everything I've done. Look at that. Build success. Okay. So we'll go rebase build fixing. Okay. So we're going to do that for the moment. And then we're going to squash, create branch. Speaking of foo, we'll do that. So, fun story. I actually have a friend who we call Foo, at FOO. Which I will admit, when he first introduced himself to me, I nearly died laughing. I don't think that was his intent, but that was the result of what happened. Actually, let's squash on Foo, I guess. So Foo, if you're watching, hi. Okay, let's take a quick gander at these because I just kind of want to see the squash result. So this added a bunch of observable collections. We could probably clean these up with expression-bodied members. Not really concerned with that. There is this initialized data. I might go flatten this. I see this pattern a lot with initialize methods. In general, I don't see a point of having an initialize method if it's only called from a constructor. Because all you've done is mitigate your ability to use features like read-only and getter-only auto properties. This would trigger me in a code review on production. And we might go fix it. So the big thing here is if you need to do a case insensitive contains, there's an overload on the a static method on string that takes in an enum that lets you do case insensitive contains. I think you do it with a compare to, I don't remember. But the important part is when you do to lower, this ends up making copies of your string. So this takes the original item and the current text, makes a copy of each of them, and then does a contains. It's by far more efficient to just do the contains and tell it case insensitive than to make the two copies. Also, to lower and to lower invariant are a thing. Reflection-y stuff, don't care that much. Let's see, converting to brush. There is a bit of a question of should you have brushes in your view models, but this is a demo app. I'm not that concerned. The goal of the demo app is not to show proper MVVM, despite what some people think. And the reason is because the demo app has to show the breadth of capabilities of the library, and some people don't use MVVM. And so I usually tell people, don't blindly just follow the demo app, because you will not build a good app. It is not structured like a good app. It is structured to show the breadth of what's possible, not the right way to do everything. Because you should not have all patterns in your app. You should have one or two and stick with them. Don't go crazy mode. Okay, so there's defaults. Why are we including this multiple times over? I think we're over referencing this thing, and so there's probably, yeah, we've got too many in here. That just flattened them up. This one may have actually been me with XAML styler, but I'm not, because I doubt anybody spent much time moving path up to here and ordering it. That's very much a XAML styler interaction. Vertical, yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Reordering those properties is fine. Doesn't bother me. Okay, this one here, we might do a little cleanup. We might file scope some of these namespaces. I'm not real concerned about it. Okay, so that's cleaned up. That's cleaned up. That guy did go to a file scope namespace. He's clear. The auto suggest box could probably be cleaned up. So let's do that. Auto suggest box. Let's file scope the namespace because I'm trying to get the entire library converted to it. I did a blind, like, apply all situation to it. And it was awesome and glorious, and I approved. File contents are unchanged. That seems unlikely. Wow. And what are you showing a change for? Interesting. Okay, that's just a white space. Oh, we dropped this. This is probably important. The text field assist changes we can probably remove back out. Let's go put those back. Because these are almost assuredly just rebase problems. So that goes like that. And then that's just formatting. I don't care. Okay, so that's fine. Those we cleaned up, that we cleaned up. We've probably got too many includes, but we are clean here. So we are going to go stash, switch, pop, stage, amend, push. Okay, moment of truth. Do I have force push permission to somebody else's repo? I do. Terrifying as that is, I have force push permissions. Yes. Oh, I love it when people leave me with access because it means I can clean stuff up. Okay. Plus, I kind of felt like I didn't want to subject somebody else to that rebase. Sorry, bubble in my throat. I didn't want to subject somebody else to that rebase since I'm the one who did all the file scope namespace things. Okay, let's fire this guy up and play with him. Let's fire this guy up and play with him. Okay. Let's see. Yeah, because that cleaned up the usages. And now this actually shows usages and it's not deletable. Okay, perfect. That makes me feel a lot better. Okay, so this guy is under fields. Okay, so very bottom, we have these guys here. So color, right? I can type in red. If I move my cursor here, right? I can do down arrow, enter. You chose medium violet red, right? I can type in red and jump to there. I'm surprised when I tab right here. And I wonder if that's the contains method that's doing that to me. Let's go and clean that up. Fields, view model. Okay, first of all, we're gonna expression body all the members in this document. Just straight up done. Okay. I also wonder. So this is one thing that I've seen done a lot, and I don't know if I like it. So this is not quite correct. We want to do, right? Because that's auto suggest one text box text value. Yeah. So we want to do this. So the if property of the Boolean return from set property indicates whether the value is changed or not. So, and then this is just an and condition. So then we can flatten this guy up. So let's see, the IME issue on the dialog host, mislocated IME on the top left corner is reproducible with Japanese IME. Ah. Well, that at least explains why my buddy was able to do it. So that makes me feel better. So if I, at a minimum, if I fix it and he can confirm fix, that gives me a lot of confidence. Thank you, Andrew. I'm working right now. Well, don't risk your job, Andrew. Feel free. Like, I will go back to what I said earlier. Open source work is a passion project. So your day job should probably come first. But I do appreciate it. Like I said, I think what I'm going to end up doing is going through those suggestions with the setting focus on the window host. So let's clean this up. Okay, so here, like this is match. The other thing is, like, I think people often miss this. These little itty bitty dots right there, those are important, right? Those tell you that the autocode button is going to light up. Or I should say the former autocode button. Copilot is literally the autocode button, but the quick actions, these are useful. Whenever I see the little dots, my default setting is, ooh, what is that going to let me do? Which is the right way to do it. Okay, so we want to do a string. Let's see. Oh no, it's index of, isn't it? How do I do this? Item index of current text. There. So return this greater than or equal to 0. So this is the way you do a contains with ignore case without having to make the copies everywhere. So index of, and away we go. The other thing I'm noticing, we have nullable reference types turned on. Yeah, so we don't need this. We can just do is match. Those work. That goes there. That goes there. What are you wanting to? Oh, use string contain. Oh, is there a contains overload that takes the? Oh, look at that. Cool. Never mind. There's a contains overload. Is this new? I feel like this didn't exist in older versions of .NET. Yeah, you'll note it's doing index of. Okay, fine. So if you don't have the contains, just do index of. That's literally how contains is implemented. Okay, and then you're probably just wanting an expression bodied member. Yeah, sure, fine. We can expression body the member, and then what? You want to be static? Yeah, you can be static. So this here, going between a color and a brush, I think we already have. We don't need this here. This is, oh, and you can now be static. I think we've already got like a solid brush converter, don't we? Color to brush converter. It doesn't handle the case where it's already a brush. I wonder if it should. I'm also noticing this has nullability done incorrectly, so we're just going to clean that up. This is wrong. I have a firm belief in the broken window theory of software development that says if you see a broken window, you should fix it. Because if you don't, the software will just get further and further messed up. Now, there's obviously a judgment call to be made. So you are just iterating over the properties of colors to pull them out, looking for the properties of type color, and then building them up. See, the thing here is this is building up a brush. And really, this brush here should be frozen. And then this brush is being duplicated many times over when it doesn't need to be. And all of this is being done when we don't actually need the brush. So where does get colors get used? See, this is assuming a brush. I'm wondering, so we can probably kill this whole thing off. Yeah, let's kill this whole thing off. Because what we really should do here is color. And we should change this to be color. And then this should be color. Possibly null value. No. It's not possible to get a null back there. Then this becomes a color. Because this is list of key value pairs. I think at one point this was a dictionary and I flagged it because you shouldn't assume ordering of dictionary in .NET. It's not guaranteed. See, this one wants to become static, but I need to look to see if this is bound anywhere. It shows 0 usages. Let's just hunt it by name real quick. Binding test object. Yeah, see, it's bound. We probably don't want to change that. I want to go to you, though, and change you to color. Color. And what is your thing? Field can be read-only. See, now we're making progress. Read-only. It's just a little cleaner each step of the way. And then you're probably read-only. Which makes me question the subtle differences between these. Oh, you can now be read-only too, huh? Lovely. Okay, so that handles all of those. You go to become a color. Why did you tell me to make this read-only if you couldn't be read-only? Oh, probably because the type mismatched and it didn't know. Got it. Okay. That all works now. That all works, and now we just need this converter to be used inside of our fields or our fields view. Because the debate back and forth on brushes versus colors in your view model kind of comes down to the idea of how much view stuff do you want inside. And a brush is kind of a view type control object in a lot of cases because it's freezable, it has dispatch stuff with it. It's probably not meant for the view model. Should a color be in the view model? It's probably okay. It's just a, like, color itself is just a struct. It's got some data on it. This is why I have a hard time when people draw lines about what's a view code based on namespace, because it's like things like color exist out in media. Most of the stuff in media you should definitely not put in your view model, but color, it's probably okay. It's not that, like, that separation of concerns comes down to a lot of testability, and color doesn't degrade your testability. So whatever. Okay, boom. So we go here. And then we need to add the converter because it's likely not used anywhere yet. Let me look and see and make sure we didn't just add it to the root. We added it to a handful of places, but nowhere very high up. Got it. So we're just going to grab this line. Whoop. Borrow you real quick. Thanks. Come back over to fields. And in here, we've got our collection of resources. Put that in. Do we not have the colors namespace imported yet? Now we do. Yeah, sure. Shouldn't the converter also freeze the brush it creates? Ah, that's a good point. That is a very good point. That is an excellent point. Also, welcome, Nikolai. I'm actually trying to get the 5.0 stuff closer to wrapped up. I don't think it's necessarily that close, but we're getting closer. We are getting closer. Color, freeze. Good call out on that. Yeah, we should be fine. We should be fine. Okay, so we got the converter now. Let's go down to the autocomplete text box. Because I do think, secretly, I kind of want this control in so that I can implement that control that Joe and I wanted last week. Like, that's kind of, I've got a double motive here. Let's be clear. This is not a Kevin thinks that this would be great. It's like, well, I kind of needed a control kind of like this. And I kind of want to add multi-selection to it. Okay, so this guy here. Let's see. So he has suggestions. And suggestions, I assume, is a collection of arbitrary thingies, which it is. Value member. This has been appropriately renamed to elevation, which is good. Background value, and I think this is where we just need to slap the converter in place. Color to brush converter. I don't know what this one up above is going to do. Is there a data template or something in here that got added? Actually, I guess the question is, what is the other one actually bound to? Because it's bound to this auto suggest box 1 suggestions. What goes into here? What goes here? Search results. This is one thing I'm also somewhat hesitant on, is I kind of want to test this with a collection view. Because in an ideal situation, that's how we'd implement filtering. Got it. This is just burger, fries, shake, lettuce. Excellent. Excellent. We will add waffles to the list. Many of my colleagues lament the fact that I love my waffles. Oh, what just happened? Okay, where's the actual error? Oh. That's fun. So, yeah. So this is actually a good instructive moment. I just wrote item contains. And the hint is, I was surprised that it existed. Right? And if we go here and we turn on... So, other thing. I see people get tripped up by this a lot. The error list typically will show build plus IntelliSense. When you're dealing with compilers, set it to build only. It will save you a lot of headache. Right? So, there's the build, there's the project, and there's the hint. Right? In case it's not obvious. Whoop. That right there. Contains does not exist in net 472. Yuck. Okay, we're gonna do this. If let's see. Do we want... I guess the question is, when was it implemented? Or I guess, which of our TFMs care about it? Because we're net 6, net 7, so we can do if... So clearly it works in net 6. So net 6 or greater, we'll do this. Else, and extra points for spelling else correctly. Okay, I must be getting tired. Oh, Copilot! Go, Copilot! That's ridiculous and stupid, and I'm impressed. I am impressed, Copilot. I mean, I'm not shocked that it's probably seen that pattern in a billion repositories, but I'm still proud of it. I'm still proud of you, Copilot. Okay. Let's make sure we still get our colors. Something I keep thinking I want to implement is command line arguments for the demo app, so that I don't have to go, like, that way when I'm testing, I can just code in with a launch settings.json the page I want to start on. Looks like it works to me. Yay! Burger! Fries. Oh, interesting. It won't let me tab away because I haven't actually picked fries yet. Oh, and it won't let me tab away on the escape. That's interesting. I don't think that's expected behavior. I think the escape should revert the change if there was a prior selection. It's probably a bug. probably a bug. And I feel like I might want to just start writing tests for this thing. I think that might be the next step. Just start writing some tests to make sure that it works the way I expect. Is that the right course of action? I think it is. I think it is. So I think I want some tests so that I can verify that this thing does work the way that I want and behave the way that I want. So I'm just thinking for a moment to make sure that that is in fact a true statement. Okay, I think it is. Oh, Nikolai, I was going to ask you. I was realizing, I'm wondering if the 5.0 release, if it would make sense, and I'm trying to decide, because we have the defaults resource themes, and I think the 3.0 defaults are probably better. Like, I'm wondering, with the 3.0 release, should we kill off defaults and instead make people go one or the other? It would mean updating some docs, but I'm wondering if because 5.0 already has some breaking changes in there that people should be expecting. I'm kind of wondering if that would make sense. Or we keep defaults and forwarded it to one of the other ones. Because right now, I think the 2 and the defaults are copies of each other, or are expected to be copies of each other. And I'm wondering if the default should be 3, or if we should just kill off default and make people pick. I'm a little torn, but I figured I figured I'd float the idea and see. I realize that's going to anger people and mess them up. I realize that. But I'm also aware the fix is you replace the word theme with the number 2 or 3. And you only have to ever do it in one place. It's kind of a low bar for an upgrade. And given how infrequently I do major version revs, I'm trying to think of every possible breaking change I've ever wanted to make and do it all at once. If I'm going to anger people, I might as well take the heat once, spend the time writing the docs, but that's my thought. That's my thought. Okay, so let's write some tests. Yeah, I was always a bit confused why we had defaults and explicit version defaults. I'm all for making, even if it means picking explicitly, or at least having the default simply point to one of the others. Also, not contain a lot of resources itself. Yeah, the only reason they both exist is historical and not wanting to break backwards compatibility. There's also a bunch of docs that have been written that are all around, hey, when you set up a new project, right, your app.xaml needs to contain, a handful of things, a theme and a reference to the defaults. But I think what we're saying now is, let's just tell people that it's still the basic setup. It's just this needs to be either a 2 or a 3. And then we're done. That's kind of what I'm thinking. I kind of like it. Anyway, I was also contemplating trying to condense the 2 demo apps because I kind of like the look of the 3 one better. And I was contemplating putting in a switch that would actually go out to the app.resources and swap this between the 2 and the 3. That way people could swap dynamically. Now, I don't know if it would work well, but it seems like it might be nice. That way people go, oh, the 2.0, ooh, the 3.0. Just a thought. Because it will, you can't have both because last in is going to win because of the implicit styles, but seems it'd be nice to kind of flatten these into one, is my thought. And I think I kind of like the 3.0 look better. Couldn't we just change? We certainly could. The only reason for not necessarily thinking about just forwarding it on is at some point I would want, like, there's not a good way to do obsolete with XAML. And it would be nice to try to get people to switch off of it. That way we don't have to maintain it. Because at that point, we're only maintaining the default .xaml for back compat for people. And and if somebody revs from a 4 to a 5x release, they kind of expect some breaking changes. And I think if we document it well enough, because I'm planning on in the README inside the NuGet package, I want to put in at least links back out to the wiki with all the migration docs. That way there's I want it to be obvious. Yeah. And that's kind of what I'm thinking, because so I'm gonna put it on the list. I'm gonna put it on the list. 5.0 milestone. Breaking 5.0 changes. Let's add it into the list. Let's see. So we're gonna call this themes. I want to get the name correct. Let's see. Remove in favor of people using either there. I think that will go in there. Because I do want to go back and change this. I think I may have actually finished a couple of these on some of my other work, but I want to double check them to make sure that they're actually done. Okay, anyway. Autocomplete text box tests. I am not distracted. I am focused. Very focused. That's a bold-faced lie, but whatever. Let's do a separate one because this is a brand new control. Let's see. Autocomplete text boxes. Boom. Okay, and then I think what we're gonna do. Where was the one? Dialog host does it, doesn't it? Oh, I did it up here. Why did I separate them like that? Huh. I don't know why I did that. That's the caps lock key. Autocomplete text boxes. Let's see. So we're going to do a user control. And what is this one? This one going to be complete text box. We're going to do something very similar to what's... We're going to start simple and do something similar to what's in the demo app, I think. Just to kind of get things rolling nicely. So we're going to do something like this. And then this goes here, this goes here, this goes here. I don't think we need this. We don't need this. And we need to include the material design namespace. Come on. Go find it. Thank you. Okay, so let's see here. So suggestion chosen. We don't really want to call back there. And I kind of want to make sure we combine this. Selected. Does this not have a selected? See, this is what test-driven design, TDD. Let's see, Mr. X99. What do you think about the mock drama? I think people over panicked. The change was reverted. Yeah. So I will say either go back and check the recording of this at the very beginning of the stream, or it'll hit YouTube later. That was kind of what I spent the first part of the stream going over. The short version is my strong recommendation to everybody is at present, do nothing. If you're overly concerned, you may consider like pinning your NuGet package version and doing basic dependency management, which you should probably be doing anyway. Like, you should be managing your dependencies for every app. That's a given. So that should be a thing, but yeah, but I do think that people, I agree with the statement, people overreacted. I think it was, I don't think regions around one thing don't do much. I do think the people reacted way too much, way too quickly, and did a lot. Now, there may still be, there's going to be an outstanding question of should you migrate away, but I think I will be holding off making any major changes because there's one of two cases that I see happening. Either one, the author leaves the revert in, doesn't go back to it. We go back to how the things were. No big deal, right? There's some lost trust and that kind of thing that's worth discussing, but overall, functionally, not a big thing. The other case is the author comes back, sticks to his guns. He's the captain of the ship for Moq and can say, you know what? No, we are going basically to this. We're going to flag you for paid support stuff. And as the author, he can kind of choose to do that. I don't agree with the decision, but he is the one who gets to make that call. And then there might become the discussion of should people migrate off? Should people consider just sponsoring? His implementation, obviously, there's plenty of issues that people flagged it with like GDPR. Yeah. So, yeah, and migrate away from Rhino Mox once, don't want to do that again. Yeah, I wouldn't suggest people migrate away. The other thing that I think people forget about is it's not terribly difficult to fork the repo, build the package yourself, and bundle that. Right? Like, that is an option. Because the bundle, like, the commit where he takes it back out, it's literally the one line referencing the analyzer. The other thing is you can turn the analyzer off. Like, that was the thing I was surprised I didn't see everybody flagging. And I'll just show this again real quick, because I did a quick sample earlier showing people this. Is I don't believe anybody should ever do licensing or similar checks with an analyzer. I think that's the wrong place, and I don't think it provides any security. Here's the fix. Here's the way you turn analyzers off. Right? Yeah, it could be enough to provide a fake analyzer and use package source mapping with a known source. I think it's easier. You just literally tell Visual Studio, don't bring the analyzers from this package in. I don't want them. I only want the lib reference. Done. One attribute. No thinking. The problem goes away. Because this is, I am sitting on 4.2.0, the one that has the bug, as it were, right? Build. And if you take this off, you will then get you'll see the little sponsor message show up in the output as it thinks for a moment. So I put this in the wrong place. It goes up here. Where did you go? Boom. Let's try this again. Sorry, I messed it up when I was showing the conversion from, there we go. Now it's gone. I messed it up when converting to centralized package management. Exclude assets goes there. Thank you. So, yeah, I am shocked nobody else, like, I did not see many people commenting, just turn the analyzer off. There's no way to stop that. Like, does it work with central packages and package version? Yes, that's actually, so you'll note this is my directory packages.props file. So I have now turned it off for every package or every project in this solution, all one of them. As you can see, this is a very complicated unit test project with one whole test. But exclude assets. Now, the only way this type of solution bites you is if the mock library puts in other analyzers that you want to keep. This doesn't let you pick and choose. It just says drop them all. So there's a kind of a, like, the author can kind of force you into it by saying, well, I'm going to put in some analyzers that you really want to have, or some source generators that you really want to have. It's like, crap, right? Because this is an all or nothing. But at present, there's nothing in there that I care that much about. So kill them. And then the problem goes away. And then you don't have to worry. So this is the simple way. Would there be a similar way to suppress potential MS build text that could also be used for this? So yeah, this is one of those things where there's not a people can do very mean things with NuGet packages. So always check your NuGet packages, because they can always bring in MS build files as targets, and at that point they can execute whatever they want. The thing with MS build targets is they are all keyed by name. So all you have to do is either crack open their targets file and look at what they name their targets, or use the binary logger and look at what they name their targets, and then target name, same name here. Problem solved. Like that's the thing about trying to do licensing. And like, I do not like people who try to do licensing inside their NuGet packages, because at that point it's too late. Once the package is down on the dev's machine, the dev is admin. You aren't going to outdo the admin. The admin gets to win every time. The way you stop it is you don't put it on their machine, right? I think it's much cleaner to do like how some commercial packages work, where they make you pay for an account to access their private NuGet feed, right? Because then if you stop paying them, they just turn your account off and you can't access the NuGet feed. Yeah, you might have cached versions local, but you aren't getting anything new. And as long as they're putting out new stuff, that pretty much cuts the thing off at the source. So I think if people wanted to do licensing of packages, I think putting the package feed behind the paywall is the appropriate place to do it. Trying to do it inside the package itself is too late, because at that point the code is on the developer's system. You can obfuscate and you can try, but at the end of the day, you can't ever stop them. They're going to own it. And especially if it's an open source repo where somebody can fork .NET publish, it's like that's the real thing. It's like, at the end of the day, if all it's going to take me to do is a .NET publish on a fork, and I can just roll my own package for my own package source. And I think that was kind of what you were hinting at earlier with slapping in your own package source reference, is it gets real easy to bypass. To do selected item. Yeah, so all his code obfuscation was useless. I mean, it wasn't completely useless, because I did try to decompile it, like I'm sure everyone else did, to take a look at what it was doing, and it was mildly obnoxious. And I went, I don't want to invest a couple hours in this. I'm too busy. So, I mean, obfuscation's purpose in life is to make people have to waste time to figure out what it's doing. It doesn't stop them, but if you make them waste enough time, they'll go, I'm too busy, it's not worth it, right? That's its value proposition. So it's not security, it's just annoyance. Let's see, is there a particular reason the elevation and value member dependency properties are prefixed with AutoCompleteTextBox? No, that's a good point. We should axe those as well. Actually, everything in here that's prefixed with AutoCompleteTextBox should probably be axed. I think because this was done differently before, we should kill all of these off. Actually, before I do that, I want to write the test for what I want. So I want that. I want that. I do want a selected item property in here as well. I don't know if I care about doing this. I think what I really want to do here, though, is rather than dock panel, let's just do, because this is a test, so we don't care. Right? I just want to prove that we can bind to an object with a given template. Just going to bind something simple in here. It doesn't matter what, as long as I can prove that I bind it. And then what'd I do wrong? Oh, this comment can't live here. That has to go up here. Yeah, because I do want this thing to have a selected item property, because I want it to feel it should feel combo boxy. Like I said, the only other thing I think I want to do, though, is make it have multi-selection, because that's one of the big, like, people often ask, how can I implement multi-selection with a combo box? And my answer is usually don't. That's not what you don't want to go down that path. Okay, so that clear. And this one here, I'd like this to work without the need of binding text. So I want this thing to have a set of suggestions. I honestly don't care about any of this stuff. I think we'll do that. I think this is the simplistic use case that, well, no, even better. Let's get rid of the template even. Except for we called this with templates. We should leave the template. But I wanted to have a selected item. And I want it to have a... Okay, so let's clean this up real quick. The public class autocomplete text box with template view model. That is a very long, verbose way of typing all this out. Let's see. Data context gets new, autocomplete, blah, 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 blah. There. Okay. And then I want to change data context, design instance type, local. Boom. Okay, so I want to do that. This thing needs, I want it to bind to a property called suggestions. So let's make me a suggestions thing. Public list needs to be an object of some kind. Excuse me. Let's see, suggestions, get. One of the problems I often find with multi-select is visualization of those. You often have flexibility to template each individual item. Dually horizontal stack those in the selected item area. It quickly becomes nasty. Yeah, that's the thing. I think what I want, though, is I want to have the ability of doing that. Because you're right, the UX becomes problematic if the user's going to select more than maybe like 3 or 4. It really falls apart quick. But there's been plenty of times where I've seen where there's only like, you only have like 3 or 4 total options anyway, and so having those show up isn't that big of a deal. So I want to make it have that ability. Okay, so let's pick a public class suggestion thing. Great. And this guy is going to need a name. Public string name. Perhaps allow for a separate template for the selected item area. Yeah, and really what I'm thinking is potentially even a completely separate control template. Because I think the behavior of this control as the template sits now is probably good enough for a default template. But I want to be able to write an overloaded template that does it, and I want the behavior of the control such that I could leverage that. Okay, so we're going to do that. No. Actually, autocode button. Generate constructor. No, be non-nullable. Okay, and then we're gonna go here, CTOR, suggestions gets new, object initializer, new, thing one. Oh, and I need you to be suggestion thingy. Yeah, so both new and derived control. See, I'm trying to decide if there should be a derived control that has multi-selection on it, or if the base control should support multi-selection straight out. I don't know the proper solution there. Which is kind of why I want to write tests, because I don't want to play with it just to see it work. Okay, so that goes there. Suggestions, suggestion item template, this guy here, and then just swap the template based on the mode. Yeah, either swap the template or even just expect the caller to swap the style of the control. Kind of like how we have various styles for like the toggle button that may look very different. I'm like, it wouldn't bother me if in order to get the multi-selection in this, I had to go and pick a different style for the control to get that behavior. That would be okay for me. But there is that question of, should there be like a multi-select auto-suggest box? I don't know. I don't know where that line gets drawn yet. Okay, so that goes there, that goes there. That builds it up, that builds it up, that builds it up. I want to give this thing... Yeah, I'm also okay with it, discoverability somewhat. Yeah, that is a very fair comment. Let's see, class. Autocomplete text box tests. Let's see, so I want my test base. Do that, do that, that, do that, grab the constructor, do that, do that, do that, do that, grab sample test. Let's see. Okay, so what are we testing here? We want to test that let's see. Can filter items with just suggestion binding and display member. I realize that doesn't exist because I'm trying to decide, because I feel like I want this to work out of the gate, but there would be no way to filter without knowing what the display member is. There's precedence with the data grid. I wonder if that's worth considering. For example, data grid columns, data grid text column. They allow for there's a binding for the value that will filter. Because I would love it if this thing would just filter out of the gate for me without me having to think too hard. It'd be really great if it would do that for me. I don't think there's any way to have this thing auto filter without the caller specifying something. Because this thing had auto suggest box, display member. let's ignore the fact that I named this thing with template, and let's just start here. Don't care about you. With suggestions and display member, filters, suggestions. So I think what we want. The other thing is we probably want to have something built into this that allows for a predicate to be specified. See, and I don't know if we need all of this. Doesn't the... Is there not a... Oh, there isn't one. Oh, interesting. Okay. I feel like some of these are going to die once we drop the... Yeah, for example, this one has auto-suggest border brush. Once we rename this to border brush, it now conflicts, and then we just kill the property altogether. I think... and I don't... Thickness doesn't make sense. This should either be called padding or margin. And same with like max height, it's going to die. So some of these things are going to drop once we start flattening them. Let's see here. Okay, so back to the test. If we do that, I want to make this thing have more apples, bananas, orange. I want something to over beans. I can't think. That's how bad this is. Beans are the closest fruit that I could come up with. Some of you are laughing because you're immature and you know that joke. Some of you are confused, and that's probably for the best. So we're gonna go here. We're gonna go load user control, and we want AutoCompleteTextBox with template. And this guy's root level item is AutoSuggestBox. Let's see. User control. Get rid of all this. All that goes away. Cannot convert iVisual element. Oh, so it's just a flat iVisual element. Great. Mountain Dew in the list with the... See, thank you, Justin Bieber. That's what I was needing. There's not enough Mountain Dew references in this repo yet. That's what we are. That is clearly what we are missing. Okay, so complete text box. Do I not have the namespace included? What? Oh, auto suggest box. Oh, I named this wrong. That's why I'm so confused. I'm an idiot. That's auto suggest. Now the question is, well, we're not renaming it yet. Do that. I'm not going to rename that one just yet because I want to come back to it. User control, get element, auto suggest box, and then we don't need to grab it by name, grab it by type. There's only going to be one in there. Okay, so now we want to come in here and we want to do this box, suggest box. What is my... I think we move keyboard focus. So what do we want to do? We want to filter. I think we want to just type the letter B, right? I think. I don't want to set text. I want to, it's my command for send input. That's what I want. Keyboard input. I think I left myself an overload for this at some point. I want to send the letter B. Okay. That's what I think we want to do. And then we want to verify that the pop-up is open, that there are only 2 items shown in the list. Yeah. Let's grab the... We expect there to be a pop-up control. What is the... So he's not decorated with template parts. So that's another problem. We need to do that. Get template. Oh, so hold on. He does have this defined. List part. Template part. Let's see. Auto suggest box list part type type of list box. I'm wondering if that really needs to be a list box or not, but am I just stupid? Oh, is it supposed to be just name? Okay. Is that really the only thing? How do it know the pop-up if it doesn't grab it? Oh, so it doesn't care if there's a pop-up control. It sets the property and expects the style to react accordingly. That's very interesting. We can do this, and then we can get rid of that, and we can do is, and actually we can do selected value, and then we don't have to re-query it down here. What's old value used for? There. I need to bring kids to schools and go to work. This is Nightcast Now, part of your live stream for once. It's not happening. We'll watch the recording. See you later, Nikolai. Have a good day. Okay, so decrement selection, increment selection. Interesting. Where do these get used? Ah, so on the keyboard things. Got it. So really what we're checking for then is pop-up open? That's really what we care about. We would like to generate helpers then for this. So assembly generate helpers type of auto suggest box. Boom. Okay, so what this does with XAML test is it goes through and generates a bunch of extension methods. So now in my tests, because I'm not actually interested in the pop-up, what I would like to do now is assert true, right? That await suggest box is pop-up open, right? I would like to make sure that so when we've done this, we expect the pop-up to be open. It doesn't do any filtering by default. And I kind of feel like it should. Yeah, there's some cleanup that needs to happen here. So let's run this. Let's make sure this much works. So, stand by for a moment while it recompiles the universe. Okay, so that guy failed. Now, let's bring this over and take a look at why it failed. We only have a single assertion, so there's only a few places where this is likely to have fallen. Failed to find child element auto suggest box. Well, that's disappointing. Doesn't this give us back the... Oh, is this a... Do I just need to do that? Because I think user control gives me back the content. And because the... There we are. Ta-da. Okay, so we're now passing. The question then is, what does this guy have? Because I think we would expect that suggestions is filtered. I think that's what we would expect. Yeah, I think that's what we would expect. So visual element, let's grab the pop-up. Pop-up gets suggest box, get element by type, because we only expect to have one pop-up in there. We'll find it. And then inside of our pop-up, on the template, there's probably only the one guy. Where did I put you? Where did I put you? Why am I being... That's the demo. Quit expanding the demo, you moron. It's below the test. Okay. Thing. Auto suggest box. Okay, so in here, when we go and grab the template, and we don't care about the Visual State Manager. Why is his background red? That's probably a mistake. Pack icon, all of that jazz, all of that jazz. Pop up. We're gonna get this inside the pop up. We expect to find a list box. So let's grab that. Visual element, list box, suggestion list box, gets pop up, get element. Let's see. Oh, wait. And I think what I would like to do here is also assert true that the pop-up get is open, right? I don't want to make sure, I want it, because part of what we're validating here is not just the behavior of the control, but the UI template. So we want to verify that the control sets its property correctly and the template is appropriately bound, or at least responding to it. So we do that, and then we would like to do assert, suggestion list box, get item source. Item, yeah, boy. What does list box have? Because I kind of want to grab the item count. You could grab the item source, but is that actually accurate? No, a better way of doing it is not grabbing the source, but checking which items we see. Right. There's only 4 items. So assert true. We expect to find suggestion list box get element. We expect to find some element of type text block with a what is it? XAML test. It's like XAML test.query. Element query. Property of text block. I expect the name of text block dot text. This is not how this is supposed to work. How do I use you again? I don't remember how I did this. Let's see. Element query. Property expression. Property expression with value. I don't know why property name doesn't come with one. Oh, there it is. Name value. Okay. Got it. So I want to do expression query of type text block. Okay, got it. I can remember my own fluid stuff. Property expression. And I would like to do x lambda x dot text. What? Don't you have? Doesn't property expression have an overload that takes an expression? Bunk of t. Text block. X dot text equal to the value. There we go. Way too much typing. I don't know if I need the of type. I think I can just do property expression. And then I don't need you anymore. Let's see. I don't know if it gives me the ability to test for false. I just realized that. I expect to see XAML test. I don't think has a good test for does not exist. It only has a test for existence, not the absence of something. Might have to go add that. Validates these elements are found. We're going to do this, and then we expect to find UI tests. We expect to find bananas and beans in the list. Bananas, beans. Now, this test should still pass, but it's not right because we expect the other ones to be hidden, which we know they aren't being done. But I think we might have to go add something in the XAML test for like assert missing element or something. That still passes. Okay, so that gets us closer. I can say close. Let's clean up this test. So I feel like I'm slowly dying. Auto suggest boxes. We need to just start fixing all of these. Auto suggest. That's auto suggestion. Auto suggest Okay, auto, and then this needs to be changed to auto suggest text box text. Okay, so then let's just do a quick search for auto complete. Did I miss anything? No. Okay, good. So that much is cleaned up. Let's see. Do validate. Validate. Other items are hidden. Let's see. We're gonna go up to the auto suggest box, and we're gonna do some to-dos here. To do remove auto suggest. Wow, Copilot. Wow, I am impressed. I am utterly impressed. Okay, and then we want to do some tests here. To do displays. Well, to do test case with I collection source. Yeah, we want to add more tests. We want to do some cleanup. We're going to add some more stuff in. Let's just check what we did. Did that. Cleaned up the fields. Cleaned that up. Added in new tests. They all say the word suggest. Excellent. Nope. Did not get the class name internally. You suck. Auto suggest. Auto suggest. Copy the word suggest. Place the word complete with it. Okay, let's go here, and I'm just gonna go paste, 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 paste. There, that should be all of them. Let's make sure we go. That doesn't exist. That's fine. Expect that. We expect that. You know what? We don't actually care about this user control. Let's flatten this and do this, do this, as that, do that, boom. There, that's cleaner, I think. And then build, make sure that still works. Great. Okay. Now that's all suggest to there. That works. That works. That works. That works. That works. Adding some to-dos. Starting on the UI tests. Mix. Push. Okay. I think we're going to let that guy go, but it is midnight for me, so I think with that, I will probably call it. Again, my intent is to kind of hack on this stuff and try to get the 5.0 bits done. If I can con some people into doing a stream with me on source generators and analyzers, I do want to work on that because I've got several analyzers and generators that I would like to improve and make better. So we'll see if I can con some people into joining me. I sent some emails earlier today, and we'll see if anyone replies. So Justin Bieber, always great to have you around. With that, I will tell everybody happy coding. Have a good night. See everyone next time.